Call the special meeting of the Jackson City School Board of Education to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. McDonald?
Present.
Mr. Moore?
Here.
Ms. Harless?
Here.
Dr. Morris?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Present.
All right, can everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I need a motion to second to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Harless?
Yes.
Dr. Morris?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes. Now we're going to take a brief recess into executive session. Could I have a motion, a second?
So moved.
Second?
Ms. Harless?
Yes.
Dr. Morris?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Stay in here.
come back out of executive session there. Could I get a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Dr. Morris?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes. All right. I apologize for the time. I didn't think it was going to take that long. We were talking about personnel employment. So move on to public participation. We got Jessica Kingery. And we usually allow you 3 minutes. So, yeah, come forward and we'll.
Okay, hello, my name is Jessica Kingery. My son may be attending preschool for the 2021-2022 school year. I have several concerns with masking my child and would reconsider sending him if the masks are made mandatory again for this school year. Masks reduce intake of oxygen, leading to carbon dioxide toxicity. Germs are trapped near your mouth and nose, increasing risk of infection. Wearing a mask causes you to touch your face more frequently. There is no scientific evidence that supports healthy people wearing masks. Masks obscure your facial features and impede normal social interaction. My son would need an IEP for speech therapy and already has trouble communicating as is. Putting a mask on him would make it even more difficult to communicate with others. He also learns from watching others' mouths and lips move when trying to learn words or sounds. I believe this would create further delays and problems for him. I also believe the mask poses a major health risk for my child who doesn't know how to properly use a mask. In my opinion, if a family, teacher, or administrator feels more comfortable wearing a mask, that is their decision. I don't feel this should be mandatory, and families should have the right to make that decision for their children. This is the United States of America, where we are supposed to have our freedoms and rights to make our own educated decisions for our children. In the past 2 days, we have gathered signatures for a petition which states the following: to the administration and school board members of the Jackson City Schools, because of increasing concerns about the ill effects of wearing masks for extended periods of time, decreased arterial oxygen level in the blood, decreased safety as masks are not worn in a sterile environment, increased chance of contamination with extended use, increased bacterial growth inside the mask, decreased communication, socialization, increased mental health stress, and the fact that there are no new mask mandates for the county or state, we are requesting that you allow individuals, staff, and students to determine for themselves if they wish to wear masks. Because of the increasing numbers of injuries and deaths from the COVID-19 vaccines and the fact that they are still under emergency use authorization, we are also requesting that you do not promote vaccines for the students at this time. We currently have 94 signatures, and this shows that there is a growing concern in our community on how this is affecting our children. We are asking that you please highly consider these concerns and delay making a decision at this time. Thank you for your time and your consideration in this matter.
Thank you.
Would you guys like a copy of?
I'll take it.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And Dustin,
Shoot this one from the hip. Hey, my name's Dustin Ryder, and through the pandemic, I've been pretty, calm about everything, and I've been taking all the information in and, kind of seeing how everything's been going in the community. Our community is, I think, a unique community that I'm proud to be a part of. But I feel like as this thing has gone on, we didn't have a whole lot of information at the beginning. Everyone was a little worried. Utmost amount of caution, you know what I mean? Everyone was like, hey, let's just figure out what's going on, what we got. Until then, we take as many precautionary steps as we can. I think if you sit down and look at the data, which I've been looking at, and I think you'll find out that a lot of the experts have been wrong about a lot of things. They weren't wrong about everything, but they were wrong about a lot of things. And I think what we're finding is, as time's passing, we're finding out that things that we thought were true, they said it didn't come from a lab, it came from bats, and which it did originate, but these are kind of things where I feel like if you look at the facts, I don't think it lays out a case that kids should be wearing masks in school or anywhere for that matter. So that's kind of the way I feel about it. I haven't really been too involved with this, but I've got kids coming up to age to go to school, and the same thing, me and several others who can't be here have expressed their opinion that they're not going to send their kids to public school if they're going to mandate masks. And my question would be, when does it stop? if it doesn't stop now, when you have a .0007 percent chance of contracting the virus and having a fatal effect, well then, what, you know what I mean, why are we wearing them at all? So, that's all. I just wanted to be present, make my voice heard. A lot of people who can't be heard or don't want to be on TV. I just think everyone should sit back, wait for more facts, and read more facts. If you guys are interested in any of the information I have, I'm willing to give it to you, because I know a lot of things have been shuffled around, and they're not really getting out to the people that they should. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Appreciate it. Okay, we're gonna move on to the new business, and Mr. Howard's gonna talk about the mask policy or no policy now, and give you some information on it.
For the last few months, we've touched on the topic of COVID for the start of this next school year. You know, we put off making a decision, and I believe rightfully so, to allow more time so that, you know, the experts could look at the data and render a recommendation. We know that last year we were highly successful with the two goals that should be our two main goals as a district, and that is, number one, the health and safety of our students, 2,400 students, approximately 400 employees, and potentially, you know, the community at large. We were successful with that. We were also successful with being able to stay in school and have in-person schooling all year long, when a lot of districts were out almost the entire year. And that in-person schooling is extremely important, because we know the psychological and emotional damage that can come to kids for not being able to be in school. I felt like that Jackson City schools were the safest place in the county last year. We wore masks. We had barriers in the classroom. We disinfected desks in between class changes at the middle and the high school. We had hand sanitizer stations on buses and in every single classroom. We also, at the elementary, we taught in a self-contained setting as opposed to our normal departmentalized setting. And of course, we limited our attendance at extracurricular events. So what do we know about COVID now? Well, we do know that there's been over 600,000 Americans that's died, 20,000 Ohioans. We know that there's a vaccine that's tremendously effective against COVID for the kids, for everyone that's 12 or over. We also know that the vaccination rate for the state of Ohio is under 50%, and it's actually much lower than that for our county. It's 36% in Jackson County. We know that there is no opportunity for vaccination for about 1,200 of our students at the elementary level that are below the age of 12. We know that the CDC is recommending that students and staff go back to school wearing masks, as well as the AAP, American Association of Pediatrics, or Academy of Pediatrics. We also know, and I'm not sure that most people are aware of this, but that there is a CDC mandate that's still in effect. So regardless of whether this board implements a mask policy or not, unless the law changes, that's going to remain the same. Any student, anybody that's on a bus must wear a mask. That's going to be in place regardless. So a person could avoid that if you transported your student to school and we had a no mask policy or a voluntary policy, then they wouldn't necessarily have to wear a mask. But if you're on a bus, you're going to be required to wear a mask. The experts here locally, Kevin Aston, the county health director, has stated that, you know, his official opinion is that we should go back to school requiring masks. We also asked and sought the advice of two local doctors, Dr. Owen, who talked about the benefits of masks, and Dr. Howler, who spoke and actually said on numerous occasions that she didn't understand why we would do anything any differently than what we have, than what we did last year. So here we are a few weeks before school starts. I know that nobody wants to wear a mask, myself included. We all want things to get back to normal as much as possible. But decisions that we make for the start of the school year could have dire consequences. So if any board members want to weigh in, we can do that, and then I'm willing to make a recommendation later, or.
Yeah, I have a few things I'd like to say. I'm not anti-vaccine, I'm not anti-mask. I'm vaccinated, my wife's vaccinated. I wear a mask in my office when I'm working one-on-one with patients. I know when Doc Owen was here the other day, we made the mention about that's why we didn't have a flu season like we normally do, is because of wearing masks. We talked a lot about emotional development and social issues with the kids. One thing that I noticed during the pandemic, when the numbers were really high and we were requiring masks across the board, which I was in support of, was when we were doing some at-home stuff on those days when we were remote. My 8-year-old was in 2nd grade, and he made the statement that that was the first time he'd seen his teacher's face. He didn't know what she looked like. That hit a nerve with me, because I think you could make the argument, especially with the little kids, which are the lowest incidence, they're the lowest risk of contracting COVID, that other than parents and maybe grandparents, their teacher is probably the biggest influence on their life at that point, the most important person in their life. That's who they look up to. That's who they get their information from. And my little boy didn't know what his teacher looked like. He'd never seen her face. That bothered me, even though I thought it was necessary at the time. The incidence of COVID in the state of Ohio is extremely low right now. There's 9,003 active cases out of 11 million people. It's not a really significant number. Is it coming back? Is it trending up? That you could make the argument that it is. Is it here now in Southern Ohio? Not, in my opinion, not to the point that we need to require our kids and our staff to go back wearing masks when we start school here in a couple of weeks, unless the numbers change. You have to be flexible and you have to be reasonable in these situations, that things are going to change. We had a mask policy last year. We're prepared to have a mask policy. We have the masks. And if the numbers trend up and we start to see that in Southern Ohio, we don't want to send our kids because it's dangerous, well, you institute a mask policy. The way things sit today, in my opinion, it's not necessary. I think we did a lot of jumping the gun last year, made some off-the-hip decisions. I made the comment to Phil before that, my office was shut down for 2 solid months. My people had no income, I had no income, and they sent us back to work before it got here. I don't want to be in that same situation. If it's necessary, absolutely. I'm not anti-mask. The way it is in southeastern Ohio today, though, I don't think it's necessary. So the recommendation that Mr. Howard's going to make, I'm a no.
Any other board members? Like to comment? I've got a couple things. I have spoken to some parents who have young children who have heart conditions, respiratory issues, who aren't comfortable sending their kids back to school if there's not some kind of safeguards put in place. I mean, I gotta think about that. There are other kids younger kids do not necessarily catch the virus, but younger kids could be asymptomatic and not know it and bring it back. There's a lot of events going on right now. There's county fairs, there's people on vacation. We come back to school, these people, of course, they're out everywhere now. They're around other people. When they come back here, they're going to be in a smaller enclosed environment. The American Academy of Pediatrics is also recommending it. I'm not an expert in medicine, and I don't think anybody is in here except Dr. Morris in the dental field. So I have to rely on people that, and articles and people that I talk to. My brother's a physician in Florida. I've talked to him just endlessly about this. And so, I'm thinking about all the kids that are being in schools, 2,400 kids almost, and 400 staff members when they come back in. And we don't know what it's going to be when school starts in a couple weeks, 3 weeks. A lot could change then. The numbers are going up now. They're up to almost 750, which isn't a lot, but 3 days ago they were 200 and something. So they're going up. The variant is, it is stronger from everything I've read and talked to some professionals about it. So I feel that that we have to do everything we can to safeguard other people's children. What people want to do with their children is up to them. We can't look at it that way. I mean, we got to take the safeguards, because if something would happen and the spread would start hitting the schools, it's going to be kind of tough to back out then at that point.
I have a question. So you mentioned, on the bus they have to have them now, CDC says. Are we going to continue to sanitize, have our barriers?
Yeah, I mean,
Because that was instrumental in assisting that, everything.
yeah, I think that we don't need to necessarily do every single thing that we did last year. For example, I think that last year, when we went outside for recess, the kids still had to wear their mask, and, they were only allowed to play in certain little pods, and, Pat and I are best friends, but I can't play with him at recess, and we're outside at the same time. We would allow our kids to not have to wear the mask outside at recess. Some of our cleaning protocols we would still keep, but I think that there are areas where we could do some things differently than what we did last year and not be as rigid. One of the things is that last year we talked about a mask, and some people didn't want to wear a mask, they wanted to wear a shield. Since it's not a mandate and it's not required, I would be okay with the recommendation that it be either a mask or a shield. And in that case, that would help some teachers who, Michelle, you're teaching speech, kids need to be able to see your mouth. As you referred to there a while ago with your child, you still have a mask, you still have a shield on, you can still see the face. So some of those kind of things I think that we could definitely do differently the next year. And look, I understand what Dr. Morse is saying. I'm not saying that it's definitely here right now, but it's hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube when it gets out. And, with only 30% of the population of Jackson County being vaccinated, last year at times we had 150 to 180 kids that were quarantined. And then they changed the rules towards the end of the year where if you were wearing a mask, you didn't have to quarantine people. So if we come back, and my biggest concerns are obviously health and safety of the kids, and secondly, being able to stay in school in person. I'm afraid that with the quarantining that we would have to do without mask, because we'd have to go back to the technique of if you're within 6 foot of somebody for more than 15 minutes and you're in a classroom, we could end up, at the high school when you're changing classes, if one kid has COVID and he's got 8 classes, he could potentially take out, and we've seen it, 20.
It doesn't take 15 minutes to change classes.
No, he's in that classroom for 45 minutes, so he's sitting by 4 or 5 people that's within 6 feet of him, so those 4 or 5 are going to be quarantined. The next period, he's doing the same, so that one student ends up taking out, potentially 20, 25 kids of quarantine. You get 4 or 5 of those, you're up to, we had over 100 at times just in the high school that were quarantined. So those are the kind of things that could potentially cause us to have to close the school down if we got so many kids that are actually quarantined. Where if we're wearing masks, those rules don't apply. The only time that we had to quarantine students when we were wearing masks were at lunch, because obviously you're not wearing a mask while you're eating. And so if Alice and I are sitting close together at lunch, I come down with COVID, well, she's going to have to be quarantined. But if we're in a regular classroom and we both had our mask on, she wasn't required to be quarantined. So I could see potentially, what could happen is that it could cause us to have to quarantine so many people. And, what about all of our, it's not the most important thing, but it's very important to a lot of the students and families and the community in general, the extracurricular activities. I could see that if we don't get this right, potentially, we wouldn't be able to have sports because you're going to have so many people that are quarantined that you're not going to be able to participate. And we had some of that last year, and if we're not wearing masks and it becomes prevalent here, that's what could happen. Look, I realize that this recommendation is not going to, it's not going to make a lot of people happy, but in my opinion, what's right's not always popular, and what's popular is not always right. And you know, if I was in the business of worrying about trying to keep everybody happy all the time, I should have been an ice cream salesman instead of a superintendent, because it's just impossible to do. But, you know, another factor that we need to take into consideration, we've pretty much decided that we're not going to have an online option this year. You know, we've listened to the judge and our principals and, you know, all of the issues that we had with the online. I mean, it was pretty much a disaster, the online was. I mean, there were a few kids that were successful with it, but for the most part, it was not good. So, you know, if we come back and we don't come back with masks, Pat just alluded to, you know, we have some students who are, you know, they have issues that are immunocompromised. So what happens with those kids? They just don't really even have an option. You know, they're going to have to go on their own because we don't have an online option, so they would have to choose to go to, you know, some other online school somewhere else. But if we come back with masks, everybody can come back. I mean, I get nobody wants to wear one, but you can. We've proven it. We have proven that we can do that. We've proven that these 6, 7, 8-year-old kids were absolute little troopers last year. We never had issues with them. They were better at it than our adults were. So I mean, yes, it's an inconvenience to people, but I would rather what's the worst thing that can happen if this recommendation is wrong? The worst thing that can happen is that we're inconvenienced to some degree. What's the worst thing that can happen if we get it wrong? If we get it wrong, you know, potentially you got sickness and so forth, but you also could possibly have to shut down the school. You got so many kids quarantined. You know, your extracurriculars become possibility of not being able to have those. I just think there's far more issues, negative issues that could happen if we don't come back. And no one's saying that it's permanent. Now, I do understand what you said. At what point, you know, do you say, you know, hey, we're not going to do it anymore? But I don't know, maybe it is the whole year, but it doesn't have to be. We can revisit the topic, and if we see things that are starting to go down, we can loosen it up. So it doesn't necessarily have to be permanent. You know, the amount of risk that I'm willing to incur for myself is pretty high, whether it be for COVID or anything else. I'm vaccinated, so I don't have a lot of risk with it, supposedly, but even if I weren't vaccinated, if I want to walk around and not wear a mask, okay, I may be able to live with that. And even with my family, you know, there's a certain amount of risk that I'm willing to incur there. I mean, it's lower, obviously, than the risk that I would want for myself. But the amount of risk that I'm willing to incur when it comes to 2,400 kids, 400 staff members, and potentially the community, there's a whole lot, it's a whole different ballgame for me. It's a lot lower level of risk that I'm willing to incur then. So, you know, I'm not an infectious disease expert. I try to, you know, I know a lot of things about being a superintendent. I don't know a lot of things about, and there's a lot of things I don't know about being a superintendent, but when I don't know, I seek out the people who do know the answer to those things. And I have sought out and talked to people, the experts in the field. CDC says mask. AAP says mask. County health director says mask. 2 local doctors whose opinions I value say mask. So all of this leads me to a recommendation that, you know, we come back to school under a policy that all students and staff will wear a mask or a shield while inside the building, obviously with the exception of, you know, while they're eating.
Respectfully.
Sure.
I think all of us want to keep our kids safe. I don't think that's a question, or we wouldn't be here. I also feel like that last year, we got forced into it. Maybe we will again this year, I don't know, but at this moment, it just, you know, I'm torn. I really am. I'm torn about it because at this moment, we're allowing our kids to practice sports outside and come in and be in the locker room, and they're not wearing masks. We could be mandated to do that later, but right now, I just feel like we are jumping the gun a little. And I know you're saying being proactive,
I understand.
that we can loosen
know-
up if we need to.
Yeah, and I know
But we
Dr.
can also
Morse-
tighten up when
And
we
I know
need to,
Dr. Morse
too.
is not opposed to masks.
No, not at
No,
all. It's
not
the
at all.
tightest-
It's the timing of
It's
the
the
matter.
timing, absolutely. You know, we watched a lot of our businesses get shut down because Columbus, Cincinnati, Cleveland was way worse than we were with numbers. And we saw some businesses that didn't open back up. That doesn't have anything to do with the school, but it's the point I'm trying to make also. I think we can tighten up when we need to, if we need to. That's just my personal opinion. But when nowhere around here is saying you have to wear a mask to get inside or to eat at a restaurant or, I don't know, I mean, it's a tough decision. I respect every one of you guys for whatever decisions you make. But I just have to say what I say.
Any other board members have any comments, questions? Okay, if not, I need a motion and a second on the recommendation that Mr. Howard just explained.
So moved.
Second?
Ms. Hill, roll call.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Dr. Morris?
No.
Ms. Harless,
No.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes. And now we'll move on to Mr. Howard, talk about employment of the assistant principal at Jackson High School.
Yes, I would like to recommend Doug Wooten be employed as the assistant principal here at Jackson High School.
Any questions, any comments, any discussion? If not, I need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I'm sorry, 2-year contract.
And got a motion and a second. Ms.
Motion.
Harless has a motion and. Dr.
Brian
Morris.
made this motion, I need a second.
Ms. Harless,
Yes.
Dr. Morris?
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes. And
Why did you give him
that's-
a 2-year contract?
Nobody has anything else? I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Harless,
Yes.
Dr. Morris?
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Moore? Mr. McDonald?
Yes. Meeting's adjourned.